I will start with a quote here. And it is, if you don't heal from what cut you, you will bleed on people who did not hurt you. How true and relevant is that? How many times it happens that our pain, our frustration, and even sometimes our wrath is shown or is showered or is expressed on people who have nothing to do with our pain, have nothing to do with what caused our pain, has nothing to do with our traumas, right? How many here can relate to that, right? And unfortunately, but not surprisingly, these cuts have been made by people we love, people we know, people we trust the most, right? People we depend on for our safety, right? And that's where betrayal trauma comes, that we've been betrayed by people on which we depended. We were violated, our trust was violated, right? And it can be in so many forms. These people can be our guardians, they can be our parents, they can be our relatives, our neighbors, our teachers, right? People, our friends, our people who bully us, right? And we don't realize that this pain, this trauma, it stays with us. It gets stored in our subconscious mind. And even when we're not aware, it drives us. It drives our behavior, right? And that's why I feel that betrayal trauma is a very important topic, and which is not talked about very frequently. It's something that we don't feel comfortable sharing because this pain is so personal. This pain is so private. And a lot of times we end up feeling maybe we caused it, or we did something to cause it, or maybe there were things we could have done to stop it or prevent it, and we didn't do it. So we have those regrets, right? Maybe we could have told somebody, maybe we could have talked about it to somebody, and we didn't, right? And so with all that guilt and shame and pain and hurt and anger and resentment, which all in the end creates a lot of self-doubt, a lot of negative self-talk, a lot of negative self-criticism, fear, and inability to be able to go out in the world as our authentic self. All right. So I would love to know how many here in the group today, have experienced some form of a trauma, and how that trauma manifests in your life. Like, how does it show up? Does it show up in the form of fear? Does it show up in the form of, insomnia? Or does it show up in the form of like nightmares or hypervigilance? Or what is the way that your trauma manifests?
Hi.
Hi.
I have severe trauma from childhood going up into adulthood, and I have a little bit of all of that.
Mm-hmm.
As well as like I get defensive when people tell me I do something wrong. Like, it's really hard for me to hear criticism.
And so how do you express it? What do you do when you feel somebody's criticizing you?
I usually get really defensive and I lash out.
You become angry, you become upset. And do you realize that it's these people who are responsible for your trauma, or you know it in your heart that they're not, but do you think they're triggering it in some way?
Yeah.
Okay. Just for clarity reason, are you in Fresno?
No, I'm actually in Madera. I'm a county over.
Oh, okay. So Madera is not very far. So, I am doing something on setting boundaries, right, in Fresno. And I would love to share that with you. And if you have time on Sunday, it's going to be at 5 p.m. I would love for you to join that. Okay? Because being able to kind of set our boundaries, and have that communication with people is very, very important. All right. And so anybody else would like to share? Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else would like to share? Maybe even in the chat. All right. All right. So before we go on with this, let me introduce myself. I believe most of you here are new to me. So my name is Hina Fatma, and I am an NLP Master Trauma Relief Coach based in Fresno, California. And just for like out of curiosity, does anybody here know what NLP stands for or what NLP is? If anybody knows, you can just let me know. Yes or no in the chat. No, no, no. All right. So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. What it means is using our language to influence our mindset, to influence the way we think, to influence the way we process and store that information. That is what NLP is. And it was actually founded by two people in the 1970s, which is not very far out. And what they did was that they studied a lot of different therapists and psychologists, and when they studied them, what they wanted to know was, why is it that some of the therapists and, psychologists and counselors, when they work with their clients, some of them have excellent results and some of them don't? How is it that some of the clients are responding well to the therapy that they're being given, and how come some of them are not? And so they did this study and they observed a lot of people, and what they found out was there was a particular way the successful therapists or counselors were communicating with their clients. So there was this particular language that they were using, whether it was like language, words, verbal language, or whether it was the body language. So their way of interacting with their clients was specific, and they noticed a pattern. And then they started noting down these patterns, okay? And then they also observed other successful people in other areas of life. What makes them successful? Businessmen, doctors, engineers, people out there doing businesses. What makes some people very successful in life, and what makes other people doing the same studies, having the same skill set, having the same knowledge, not excel in their life? And what they noticed again was a pattern that they exhibited the way they showed up as in life. And that's where then they created different NLP techniques or processes, and they called it neuro-linguistic programming. And then there are these specific processes or techniques that they have created that influence the way we think and, we process information, our mindset. A lot of times people tell us that, you should have a positive mindset, think positively, but then we go like, how? We know we need to do certain things, but we don't know how to do them. We struggle there. We know that we shouldn't be lashing out. We know we shouldn't be getting angry. We know we need to be controlling our anger, but how do we do it? And so that's where this NLP came in. And now I'm going to share my screen with you to share today's topic. So for more details about NLP, I'm actually giving out to everybody who's here. I will be sharing it's a training that I've done. It's called NLP Trauma Works for PTSD. And I'm going to share it with you as a gift. And it will show you and give you more in-depth idea of how I use NLP to help my clients who exhibit PTSD symptoms. And so PTSD is basically when your trauma is more than 4 weeks old. That's the book definition. So if your trauma is more than 4 weeks old, or if you're still exhibiting symptoms of your trauma, which can be from fear to guilt, resentment, inability to focus, inability to emotional numbness, negative emotions. All these are the various ways our traumas show up as. And for me, particularly, my trauma resurfaced after 10, 15 years. And it's so surprising, like something that happened when I was 14 years old and 17 years old. And then I became a doctor. I went into med school, and everybody thought that I was healing well and I was doing well in my life, right? And I was, because we didn't talk about the trauma. And people thought that just supporting her, my family thought just supporting her and giving her a different environment, giving her a different a place to be in, mentally, physically, in every way, will help her heal and move forward. And it did for a time period. But when I got married and I moved to US, and like after 15 years, and now I'm here and I'm alone and I don't have my family with me and I don't have that support system, and I'm with a person who I barely know, with a new person who's my husband, right? And he is inadvertently, not knowing, saying or doing things which are triggering me and which I myself am not aware of what's happening, right? And now again, for me also, as you just said, my default was anger, because what happens with us alpha women, like men, we feel guilty of not of showing our of showing our emotions. So we don't want to show our emotions. We don't want to cry. We don't want to show to the world that we're weak, right? And so what do we do? We do exactly what men do. How do we express that frustration? How do we express anything that we're feeling? It comes out in the form of anger. It comes out and the person standing in front of us gets to be the victim, and they don't even know where it's coming from, why it's coming from, what they did or said to to deserve that kind of treatment. All right. And that's why I ended up becoming a trauma coach, because trauma and PTSD is something which is so hard for people to share and talk about. And it resurfaces, I would never have imagined that my suffering, my depression was all linked to the traumas that had happened when I was 14 years old or when I was 17 years old. So let me share my screen here. Give me 1 second. On Zoom, when you have multiple pages opened up, this is what happens. I'm sorry about that. So let me know if you can see this. Can somebody just let me know that they can see this? Confirm to me.
I can see it.
Okay, thank you very much. All right. So this training, basically, I had created this last year for International Women's Day. So that's why it says here, Strong Women Heal Together. But of course, this is for everybody. It's not just for women, it's for everybody, for men, for children. I work with people 16 years and above. And I was actually surprised when I became a trauma coach. I thought that most of my clients would be women, and 50% at least, if not more, of my clients are men. And I was like surprised that, and it's so hard for men to share what they go through. It's We assume that men are somehow, they're expected to man up and not share their stories, and that somehow they probably don't have any trauma in their life. So what I want you to do is right now, I'm going to have you go through an experience, an NLP experience. So NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. And what it does is it helps engage all of your 5 senses, okay? So this is what I want you to do. I want you to sit back on your chair or wherever you're sitting and just relax. Take a deep breath, ground yourself, remind yourself where you are, okay? Look at your surrounding. You're safe. You're in a safe environment. You're in that room. Let that sink in. Feel the chair you're sitting on. Is it comfortable? Is it hard? Is it soft? Allow your feet to feel the ground it's touching. Is it warm, cold? Are you wearing any socks maybe? Any shoes? Are they bare? You know, just allow yourself to relax in that chair and sit and look at me and remind yourself where you are and what you're doing. Okay, you're here right now, and ground yourself, and you're very safe. And now, the 3 words that came up. When you sit back and relax, and you are more than welcome to close your eyes too if you want. The 3 words: fear, guilt, and resentment. If you focus on these words, let's focus on the word fear first. When you focus on this word, what comes up? Fear. What emotion comes up? What event comes up? What are you afraid of? What scares you? Is it something internal? Something that you feel you can't do, you're not good enough, you're afraid that you will go out and people will make fun of you, you're afraid you can't do it, you don't have the skills, you don't have the knowledge? What is it that you're afraid of? Is it internal or is it external? Is it the people around you? Was it somebody in the past? With the word fear, what comes up? Does a person come up? Or does an event come up? A particular life experience comes up? Maybe it's multiple events that come up. Maybe it's happening right now in your life. Maybe you're struggling right now. Something in your life scares you. And just allow yourself to feel it. And what's happening now with this word fear? Are you tensing up in your body? How is your breathing now? Do you feel any stress, any headache coming up, any heavy feeling coming up, chest tightness, any tingling of your hands or feet, feeling cold or feeling warm? A lot of emotions are coming up, right? What are you seeing? Even if you have your eyes closed, you're seeing something, you're seeing somebody. Engage all these 5 senses. What are you seeing? Whatever you're seeing, is there movement in it? Is somebody doing something? Or is it still? Is it just a person? Or is it just a place? Is it a panoramic? Or is it just a picture? What color is it? Does it have colors? Or is it dark, cloudy, shady? What do you see? Is there any sound with the word fear? Do you hear somebody saying something to you? Do you hear yourself saying something to yourself? Is there any guilt coming up about something that you could have done to prevent it? About something you could have done to stop it? About something that you that you feel maybe you caused it, you deserved it. What's coming up? All the negative emotions are coming up. Any resentment against yourself, against other people, anger, you can't forgive them. And who is that? What is that? Who is the person, or what is that event against whom this anger, this resentment is coming up? And I want you to direct it to that person or to that event. Be specific. Try to find out where it's coming from. See it in front of you. Hear it in front of you. Any smell. Do you smell something? Do you taste something? What's happening? Do you feel any breeze? Okay. And so whatever you have created around you, if it's panoramic, if it's happening around you, I want you to stop it. I want you to imagine you have a remote in your hand and you can pause it. Okay, and put it in a screen in front of you. Imagine there's a screen in front of you. Maybe it's a television or a cinema screen or your computer screen, whatever. And just put everything that you imagined into that screen. And I want you to float out of that screen and come back and sit where you are sitting right now. Close your eyes. Remind yourself where you are. Take a deep breath. You are safe. Allow yourself to feel your surrounding again, the way you did the very first time. Okay? Feel your chair. Look at your room. You're safe. But there's a television screen in front of you in which you have put anything and everything that you thought of, that you imagined, that came up with the 3 words, fear, guilt, resentment. It's in that TV screen. It could be one screen, one shot, one person, one place, or it could be like a movie, multiple events. But you've paused it. It's not moving. And so you're out of it now. It's in the screen. And now you have the power to mute it. You have the power to change its color, make it fuzzy, make it black and white, make it blurry. You can't see it. Okay? So no sound, no movement, and you can't see it clearly as well. Right? And now I want you to move that television screen further ahead from you, far out, 50 yards, 100 yards, 200 yards, and it's moving further away from you. So whoever came up is in that TV screen moving far out. And imagine them going into the horizon. So now that TV screen is in the horizon and it's very tiny, right? And whatever your fear was, it's in that TV screen. And it's very tiny, very far out. And now imagine there's a rocket ship there. Put that TV screen in that rocket ship. And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, blast off. Imagine that rocket ship is now in the space. It's flown away. How do you feel? How do you feel the rocket ship out, that person out, it's gone? What comes up? Share with me if you want to. I would love to hear. All right. You can always write it in the chat if you want, because I love these sessions to be interactive, but it's okay. We can talk about this later on as well. And so now going back and sharing my screen. So what I just demonstrated was basically a process to show you how anything and everything that we think, that we imagine, can be changed. Can be changed so that our current feeling is we remind ourselves where we are currently, so that it is not affected by what happened in the past. Moving forward. Okay, so classic symptoms of trauma, how it shows up. It shows up as self-doubt, negative self-judgment, right? It shows up as low self-confidence. It shows up as recurrent negative emotions, such as sadness and anger, right? It shows up as emotional numbness, when we're there, but we're still not there. We're disassociated. Disassociation. Has anybody ever here who is watching this experienced disassociation, where like you're in a crowd or in a group, sitting in a group of people who are laughing, telling jokes, you're there, you're listening to it, but you're still not mentally there. You're not laughing. You don't feel like laughing. You're not hearing them. You're somewhere else. You're lost. And that's what disassociation is.
I have.
Yeah, it's very common. And this, I mean, I have too, and now that I think of it, like when I was experiencing it, it used to happen in my med school. But now when I go back and think about it, now I realize it. Back then, I didn't know. I didn't know what was happening. I used to feel, maybe I was depressed. I used to feel lost. I used to feel so many things, but it never occurred to me that there was stuff out there that could help me, right? Sleeping difficulties, insomnia. Sometimes you lose sleep. Sometimes you want to sleep a lot. How many here sleep a lot? Do people sleep a lot here? Anybody? Especially when you're in depression, or when you're anxious. There have been times when I have not slept for days, and then there have been times where I've slept 2 weeks. I was sleeping 10, 12 hours, 15 hours.
I sleep very little.
Yeah, that's very common. That happens. But what I'm saying is that the other thing can happen too. Sleeping a lot can also be a sign of depression and a sign of trauma. Night terrors. Anybody aware of night terrors, what it is? Has anybody ever experienced it, though? Sleep paralysis is another name. And I share my experience with a lot of people. Sleep paralysis, when it happened to me, what would happen is that I am in bed, I'm sleeping, but my mind wakes up. So now my mind is conscious, it's awake. It can sense the surrounding, but in the body, I'm sleeping. My eyes are closed, right? And I would hallucinate. I would feel as if somebody came and sat on my bed. I could actually feel the bed, the mattress going down. I would sometimes feel my husband lying behind me. And I remember very vividly one time holding his finger and actually thinking in my sleep, I'm in my sleep and I'm thinking, is he really there? Because since it had happened a couple of times, I was now aware that I'm dreaming. And so in my dream, I'm asking myself, am I dreaming? You know, my mind is up. I feel it. I am holding his finger. And in my mind, I'm actually literally, pressing it and trying to feel, is this real in my sleep? Am I dreaming, hallucinating, or is this real?
I've kind of experienced that, like when I'm having trouble sleeping, I'm laying there with my eyes closed. Do you think I could be asleep but not really realize I'm asleep?
You're consciously, you're mentally, you're awake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it was like I I used to think that I'm up. I knew I am in bed, but I would question myself, am I dreaming? You know? And so I am sleeping, but I'm questioning, am I really sleeping? Because I feel I'm up. Right? Although I'm not seeing anything around me, but I'm feeling it. I'm feeling somebody putting their hand on me. Or I'm feeling my husband lying next to me, or somebody's coming and sitting in the room. Or yes, I think I do remember some that children coming in and playing, and I saw my sister, but then I was mentally aware that my sister is not here. So at that moment, when I remember my sister and some kids coming into the room, and and jumping on the bed, and I could feel the bed moving, and I would know in my dream that this is a dream, because I know my sister is not in this country. She's not here, so she can't be in my room. So I'm actually aware that I am dreaming, right? And then after a while, I would wake up and I would realize none of it was true. My husband was not next to me. There was nobody there, but I would actually feel it in real. And that's what night terror is. That's what sleep paralysis is. And that used to happen when I was in my extreme depression. And I had, like, both my pregnancies, I went into severe postpartum depression, and this was actually the worst time in my life when I used to have these night terrors. Okay. And then, of course, most of the people with trauma, they are also oftentimes diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. They may not be. I was never diagnosed with PTSD. I self-diagnosed myself with PTSD because when I became aware that I have all these symptoms and I knew what my traumas were, and being a medical doctor myself, I could relate it. So I consider myself a PTSD patient. I do get anxious. I do get depressed. The thing is, again, we alpha women, we consider ourselves so strong that we think, oh, it's something normal. Okay, something we didn't like, it made us sad. Something, our life, it's overwhelming. That's why we're anxious. We tend to underplay it. We tend to think it's not important, or it's something which will go away. But once you start taking ownership of your feelings and you start saying, no, I think I am in anxiety, I'm having this anxiety attack, I am in depression, then you can actually take control of it. You can take care of it. You can allow yourself to take that time to heal, right? Allow yourself to feel that feeling. And it's so important to allow yourself to feel that feeling. My therapist one time told me, and I tell this to everybody, and this helped me so much. She told me, you are angry all the time because you're suppressing your feelings. You're not allowing yourself to feel sad. You're not allowing yourself to feel tired. You're not allowing yourself to feel overwhelmed. You're not allowing yourself to feel maybe even just tired or hungry, or maybe, just as somebody just said, my husband says something to me, he criticized me and I didn't take it well, and I didn't allow myself to hear him out and hear what he's saying and why he's saying it, because I let his words trigger me and I assumed the worst. I jumped to conclusions. I assumed what he meant was the worst and what he was trying to do was the worst thing to do, right? Because I was not allowing myself to listen to what he's saying and to feel okay, what is it doing to me? Why am I feeling as if he criticized me? Why am I feeling as if he said something bad to me? Right? And once I allowed myself to feel it and understand it, I was actually able to tell him a lot of things. I was actually able to teach him, can you not say this? Can you say, like, for example, he used to, anytime, he used to find something on the floor, he would come home and he'd go like, okay, this cushion is on the floor, or nobody picks it up. And for my reaction would be, well, why don't you pick it up? The house is always dirty. Well, why don't you clean it up? This doesn't get done. So when you say stuff like that, what's it's implying is that it's my fault and I'm not doing my job. Right? And so my reaction would be, well, if that's how you feel, why don't you do it? Why do I have to do it? And so now that caused conflict. And once I realized that, okay, he's not liking that cup which is lying somewhere, which he himself put out there, or maybe the girls put out there, my daughters put out there, and they didn't put it in the sink, or they didn't put it in the washing. So I would say, why don't you just simply say, tell me or the girls to pick up that cup and put it in the sink, in the kitchen. It would be so much simpler and it would get done, instead of you saying, why it doesn't get done. Because when you're saying that, you're implying it's somebody else's job, it's my job, and I don't do it, and I'm not doing a good job. Right? And I was able to teach him a few things. I was able to teach him how to word his sentences. I was able to teach him how to word his tone, and he understood. I was able to teach him like what he said was triggering me, and he shouldn't be using that kind of a tone, because it triggers me, because it makes me feel threatened or upset or criticized or angry or whatever, or it makes me feel judged. And so for that to happen, I first had to understand what I was feeling and why I was feeling it. I had to allow myself to feel. And literally, when I started doing it, you will not believe me, it was the tiniest of the things. Sometimes it would literally be, I am feeling tired. Sometimes it would literally be, I'm hungry. I am getting angry and upset at other people. And it's just that I'm hungry. I need to go and eat something. That's all. That's all the reason. All right. And so these are some of the very classic symptoms of trauma. And then betrayal trauma is, of course, when you're betrayed, when you're violated by somebody you trust, who you depend on for your safety. And then what it does three things. It either makes you a codependent person, a people pleaser. You're constantly seeking validation from other people. You're constantly seeking approval. You're constantly trying to do things for other people because you're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to prove your worth. You're trying to prove your competency, right? And so you're not living for yourself, you're living for other people. You're living to make other people happy, and that's what betrayal does to us, because we feel somebody betrayed us, so we need to do something to gain their trust, right? Fear of abandonment, naturally. Again, codependency, fear of abandonment. We feel threatened. We feel, what will happen? I can't survive if he or she leaves me. What will I do? How will I do it? I can't do it. I can't live. I can't live without him or without them, right? And then, of course, dysfunctional relationships. We're unhappy in our relationships because we're unable to communicate well. We're codependent on them. We're not allowing them to be themselves, and we're not allowing ourselves to be ourselves. We're constantly expecting things from them so that we feel safe, and we're constantly doing stuff to feel safe again, and which we realize, which is actually self-sabotaging behaviors. All right. So the causes of betrayal trauma can be many. It can start from childhood neglect, abuse, bullying. All these things happen when you're a child. I have a guest coming up on May 16, the talk show that I have. It will be in my group. She actually lived, she was a foster child herself, right? She will be sharing her story, and now she works for foster care. Excuse me. She works in foster care, helping other kids. So there are stories out there. There are your stories. Okay. So betrayal trauma starts from childhood. It can be witnessing or being part of dysfunctional or broken families. Okay. So what it means is it's not necessarily that you were part of a family. Maybe you witnessed it. Maybe you saw your cousins, your uncle and aunt getting a divorce, an ugly divorce. Maybe you saw something else, something bad happening. Maybe you were witnessing people fighting in your neighborhood, your best friend's parents fighting in the neighborhood. And so there's so many things happening that either you can be a part of it or either you can witness it, and just witnessing it can even cause betrayal trauma. Okay. Losing a loved one, uh, parent, sibling, spouse, child, best friend. And this loss is not just in the form of death. This loss can be in the form of people leaving you, people not being there for you emotionally or physically when you need them, right? People cheating on you, right? That's also, you're losing somebody. You lost somebody you trusted, your partner, he cheated on you, he left you for somebody else. And the reason I put best friend here is because one of my clients, it was interesting that she had a best friend in when she was in high school, middle school and high school. And then something happened, something very minor, menial, it didn't mean, and it doesn't mean anything to her right now, like after 15, 20 years. But at that time, it was a big thing. It was maybe, I think it was about some boy or something. And they had a fight, an argument, and then they stopped being friends. And it affected her so much that even today, that girl was questioning herself. She was questioning, what did I do to lose her? Maybe I was not a good friend. Maybe I could have done something differently. So all her self-doubt and her low self-confidence and all that negative thought was associated with that one disagreement, fight that she had with her best friend, who she lost forever. And although that best friend of hers she's still in touch with her on Facebook or on social media, but they're still not that close a friend. And she misses it. And every time she sees her, or every time she sees other two people who are best friends, she misses that friendship. And it just ruins the way she thinks of herself, right? And that was a huge trauma for her, losing her best friend in real life. Like, it was not a death, it was just that she was no more her best friend, right? And so that can cause betrayal trauma too. And she somehow felt that she was responsible for it. Although now, when I worked with her and I had her go back and recreate that whole scene, she can now see that it was nothing. It was literally some 15-year-old girls fighting over something so unimportant that it really doesn't matter anymore. And then she was able to gather that courage to reach out to that friend. And I told her, you need to reach out. If you miss her, you need to call her, you need to talk to her. Anyways, number 4 is, of course, harassment. It can be sexual, it can be emotional harassment. Okay. And then, of course, witnessing or being part of terrorism, wars, riots, natural disasters, and like school shootings. So many things are happening. I know people get traumatized by even just hearing about it. You watch a movie where a girl is raped. You watch a movie where people are being cut into pieces. There's war or riots, or maybe an earthquake happened and people died, and people get traumatized by that. And it stays in their mind and they relive it. It comes back, right? It comes back anytime they feel threatened. Those images come back, right? So that is also a form of trauma. And of course, then in the end, domestic violence. It's a huge, it plays a huge part in us staying in those relationships because we have that attachment trauma that we don't want to leave them because we're so dependent on them. But we know, and we know that they're harming us and they will harm us. But what will we do? We can't survive without them, right? And so there's one thing that I tell a lot of my people, and I would like to share that, which is everything that we think, everything that happened in our past, or everything that we're thinking of will happen in the future is actually a story, you know? And the reason I had you put it in that TV screen was because every time you imagine anything and you put it in a TV screen or you put it in a book, if you're a reader, it's a story, right? So say Anne Frank's story, you know, the Holocaust. It was something very brutal, very bad, very traumatizing for a whole community. Imagine the people in it. Imagine the people who survived. Imagine the loved ones, right? It's traumatizing for us to just hear those stories. So imagine people living through it. Imagine Anne Frank living through it. But then in the end, what is it for us? It's a story for us, right? We read it, we watch it. It was something she went through. It was real for her, but it's a story for us. Right now, something happens, you know, the war in Afghanistan or the war in Ukraine. We feel hurt, we feel pain, we feel anger, everything. You know, when the school shootings happen, you know, we feel sad, we feel that anger, you know. Children get killed, right? But since we're not affected by it, it's still at the end of the day a story we heard on the news, a story we read in the newspaper or on the computer or on our phone, and that's it. We read it, we get affected by it, just like when you read a book. You know, sometimes when it's a very good book and you finish reading it, you're so engrossed in that you're living in that book for a few days. Same thing is with a movie. If it's a very good movie, sometimes even once the movie is gone, it's still there in your mind and you live it. You see it every day for a couple of days till you come out of it. All right. And so that's what our thoughts are. They're stories. And so we need to learn and figure out how to close those chapters. They are there. We can't get rid of them. Our memories are there. We cannot get rid of them. They are part of us. But we can learn to close that chapter. We can learn to, you know, shut off that part of our story. You know, that part of it's a story. So if it's coming in the news, we can shut it off. We don't want to listen to it. All right. And we have control over that. And that's what's important for us to learn. And that's what NLP does. So a little statistics here, you know, people who have experienced trauma, you know, are 4 times more likely to become an alcoholic, you know, 4 times more likely to develop an STD, inject drugs, you know, and 15 times more likely to commit suicide. That's a lot. You know, the majority of it is committing suicide. 2.5 times smoke tobacco, you know, serious job problems, depression, absent from work, from school, you know, they don't feel like doing anything, loss of concentration, focus, antidepressant medication, you know, and then you become hooked onto them sometimes, you know, and then of course drugs. And what is it? Why is all of this happening? Why are we doing all of these things? You know, like sexually transmitted diseases, because we've become we're going out and sleeping with people, right? All right. Why does all of this happen? Because it's all a coping mechanism. We're all trying to cope with our depression, with our trauma. And since we don't know how to do it in a positive way, it's easier to indulge in these negative self-sabotaging behaviors. It's easy to take a drug or take an alcohol or take a medication and just not be present there and not worry about your life and think about what's real than to do something constructive and better with your life and to learn how not to be affected by that story, right? So these are all the negative ways people control or they try to maneuver their traumas. And so in the end, we are responsible for creating our own reality. This is so important. Okay, there is a story I share. There's a father who's an alcoholic and he has two sons. One is a successful businessman. The other one is a failure and an alcoholic, just like his father. And so these people, they go and they ask the businessman, like, what's the reason behind your success? And he goes like, my father was an alcoholic. And then they go to the other brother and they ask, what's the reason you are like this? And he goes like, my father was an alcoholic. So both of them, their answer was the same, but they chose to create their own realities. So we have a choice. Both of them had the same childhood. Both of them lived in the same environment. Both of them probably had the same resources and opportunities living in that household. But then one of them chose to make a better life for himself, whereas the other one chose to become a victim, to somehow become, that victim blaming, self-blaming, where, like, okay, my father is the alcoholic, he was not good. Why did he do this to me, And that's what we start doing, right? And he was in that state of mind and he destroyed his life. He became just like his father, right? So it's important to understand you have the key to your life. If you can create a future where you can imagine you failing and people making fun of you and you not being successful and you not being unhappy, you can also create a future, because it's just a creation, it's a story. You can create a future which is very bright, which is very happy, which is very successful. And so if you can imagine it, if you can create it in your mind first, if you can believe it, it's possible. Then you can find the resources. And believe me, all of us have the resources. When people come and say, I don't have a choice, or I'm stuck and I can't get out of the situation, what do I do? You always have a choice. You always have another option. So if you're limiting yourself and you're saying, I can't do anything about it, that's also a choice. You chose to limit yourself, right? And so it's important to understand that. And then, of course, so I had in the start talked about that there are two gifts that I'm giving out to people who are attending this live. So one of them was NLP Trauma Works for PTSD. So I will email that to you guys. And the second one is that I have a 5-day boot camp, which is coming up next. It's 2 weeks from now, starts on May 23rd and ends on May 27th. And it's going to be an hour or more than an hour, depending. And it's going to be one-on-one. And plus I'm with the added bonus of another masterclass that I will share, which is on how to quieten your inner critic, how to subdue that bully in our minds. And so all of this I'm giving out to all of you at a very, very small price of $69. So if that is something that you would like to avail, you can always let me know. I will email it out to you all. If you are not on my Facebook group, I would really recommend, let me share that again with you. My Facebook group here, join that, because all of this will be shared in the group for you. And let's open up for discussion if you have any questions. First, let me know, how did you find this discussion that we had? What was your takeaway, biggest takeaway? Would anybody would like to share? Yeah. And so for that, the question I have is, I try to be positive, but sometimes it's like, I don't know what's right or wrong anymore. For that is, again, I would tell you, ground yourself first. Okay. Come in the present moment. Because what we do is, we're so much in our heads that we forget where we are. We forget what we're doing. You're in the kitchen cooking, but you're in your mind, you're thinking of what he said or what she said. Okay. So first of all, ground yourself. Remind yourself where you are. Okay. Okay. Breathe, take a deep breath. Remind yourself, I'm here in my room, or I'm at my workplace, in my office, or I'm here in the kitchen, I'm sitting in my living room. Where are you right now? Wherever you are, when you have this conflict in your mind. Okay. And then create that scene wherever you're stuck, that question, whatever your conflict is, where you're questioning whether it's right or wrong. Create that in your mind, and create it separately. Create it like, if I do this one behavior, what will happen? Okay. If I choose a certain behavior which you're questioning yourself whether I should do or not, what will happen? Just create it in your mind. See what its outcome will be. Okay. Come back. Okay, this is what its outcome will be. Now create another scene, again, a similar scene. And the other behavior, the other thought that's coming, okay, the other emotion that's coming. Separate your emotions and then try to analyze it, which one feels better, which one looks better. Because in the world, there is no right or wrong, to be honest. No one thing is right, no one thing is wrong. Something that is wrong for me could be right for you, right? Our perspectives are different. Nothing in this world has no meaning, is not without a purpose. So you have to ask yourself, why is it coming? What's the positive intention behind it? Why am I feeling this way? What is it giving me? Because every thought is giving you something. It's giving you some kind of pleasure, some kind of comfort, some kind of safety. That's why you're having it, even if it's a negative thought. Right? Normally, so in the 5-day boot camp, actually, that's what I will be covering. So with trauma, with my clients, what I've noticed was that there are 4 things that they feel. The first one being they don't feel safe. Emotional safety is very important. Okay. Number 2 is they don't feel good enough, competent enough. They can't do it. They feel they're dumb in some way. Right. And so, am I safe enough? Am I confident enough? Am I worthy enough? A lot of people ask this question. Why am I here in this world? Do I deserve to be here? People don't love me, right? They don't feel worthy of love. That's the third thing. And the fourth thing is they want to be in control, and they're not in control. We all want to be in control. We all want to have our life in our control, and it's not. And then when we feel our life slipping out of our hands, that's when we start becoming desperate. Anger starts coming in, people pleasing starts coming in. So all these behaviors start happening because things are not in our control. And so in that 5-day boot camp, these are the 4 different things that I will be teaching, one thing at one day at a time. The next question here is, how do you recognize and when you are getting lost in your head? Practice. You have to first remind yourself that you want to be staying present. Okay. There are multiple ways people, and they do this. For me, tapping myself, I would tap myself on my lap. Okay. And so anytime, even right now, if I start feeling something, even it's not a behavior, it's just a thought or it's an emotion, I feel, okay, I'm starting to get upset because I needed to get something done and it didn't get done. And now I'm overwhelmed, right? And I'm like, when will it get done? And I'm getting upset, and I'm getting upset at myself, and I'm getting upset at other people, right? And I will realize, oh, what's happening, okay? Because getting upset will not give me the solution. I need to get the solution. And the solution will only come when I am calm. And so I give myself a tap on my lap to remind myself, come in the present moment. Where am I right now? Okay, I'm in my room. What time is it? So it's 1 o'clock. What am I doing? I'm in a meeting. What can I do right now? Is this meeting important? Yes, it's important. Can my husband wait? Yes, he can wait. Can the dishes wait? Yes, they're very important. I need to do the dishes, but they can get done once I'm done with this meeting. So now I'm thinking clearly. Okay, so come in the present moment. Different ways people do it. Some people, they wear a band or something, and they can just pull and pull and remind themselves every time a negative thought comes, right? Some people, you can create anything, there are people just touching their ears, right? And how do you recognize it? Like, it's just you have to remind yourself that it's happening, okay? That this is not happening right now. You have to say, whatever I'm thinking, whatever I'm feeling, is it a result of something that happened right now? If it's not, then it's coming from somewhere else. You have to come back to the present. You have to come back to this moment now and see where you are. And then go like, what do I need to do now? What am I doing now? I am cooking. This I've done. Sometimes I'm cooking, I'm in the kitchen, and my mind is everywhere. My mind is thinking about what people said, and and I'm now getting all worked up in my mind. And I would go like, where am I? No, I'm in the kitchen. What do I need to do? I'm cooking. Okay, this needs to get done. Now I have to go and do whatever, whatever needs to get done. I have to prepare for this meeting. I have this client coming up in 1 hour, and so this needs to get done. And so I am now in the present moment. I have brushed that thought, that emotion away. It's not important. It's just creating something which is not there. And believe me, you start doing it consciously, and then it starts happening automatically. When you want to make a change, there are 4 steps to it. One is that you're, unconsciously unaware, which is that you don't know. Sorry, you're consciously unaware, unconsciously unaware, which means that you don't know that you don't know something, right? And then you become like consciously aware. So now you're aware of it. Okay, there is a problem. Then you become consciously unaware, which is like now you're trying to try to make that change, right? For example, how do you do it? When you teach somebody to write, you teach them how to hold the pencil first, then make a line, then make a circle, all right? Or you teach them how to make tie a shoelace, right? We practice it, and then now you can even do it with your eyes closed, right? You don't even need to look. You can ride a bicycle without even looking. It happens consciously. So you have to automatically. So that's what you have to do. You have to reach to a point where things start happening automatically. And that only comes with practice. All right. So let me just stop the share here. And I will stop the recording.